The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, who was more nervous, you or Rosa?
Me, I think, 100%. I didn't even sleep. I slept on the sofa.
No, you're joking. Really? That bad?
Tossing and turning. Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah. So if you're not understanding this, and you don't necessarily live in the UK, both myself and Kev, but Rosa and Jack, they're the same age, and they've just gone through what's called GCSEs, which has its sort of high school equivalents the world over, doesn't it? I would imagine that's 16 years old. And today as we're recording this show, it's been results day. Is Rosa happy?
She is very, very, very happy.
Good.
Which is great. And how is Jack? Is Jack happy?
Yeah, I think we've got the same amount of veries there. Everybody's happy. Sam even said this morning, she said, do you think it's too early to break open champagne? I said, you can't do that during the summer. That's the sort of thing you only really do on Christmas Day.
The FujiCast.
Well, I don't know. I mean, are you cracking open the champers for... you're going out for lunch, though, aren't you, after we've recorded this? Yeah. So, and then she's off to a party tonight. Is that right?
She's off to a party, yeah. We're going to the Cat and Custard Pot for lunch, which is Prince Harry's old stomping ground. And then, then she's disappearing off to a party somewhere.
What have you just done? Slam the lid on something?
I dropped my phone.
Oh, okay. So, I've never heard of the Cat and Custard. You've got about 158 pubs in your village. Is that another one that I've not been to?
This is outside. This is in Shipton Moyne, so it's a little drive. But yeah, it's a very, very nice place. Rosa loves it. Okay. They do pizza desserts. It's basically the size of a pizza, but it's chocolate and cake and stuff. Looks like a pizza as well,
but tastes like chocolate.
Yeah.
Well done, Rosa. Well done, Jack. Everybody's happy. Thank God for that. We've just got to go through it all again in a couple of years with your Albs and my Thomas.
Yeah, exactly.
You got 2 year to put 2 or 3 years actually in Albs' case, isn't it? A few years to prepare yourself yet. And breathe. Welcome to the FujiCast. You and your questions from the mailbag that you've been sending in to click@fujicast.co.uk, and also those that go into the Facebook group. How have we done with the Facebook group, Kev? Is it looking healthy? Can you work it out? Is it in the right order, or is it still very, very confusing?
It's still very confusing. We've got a couple of new questions in, but we do have plenty from the past that we can dig into, I think.
Good. Before we start, thank you to Pick Time for your support of this podcast. Pick-time.com is the website to go to. Both myself and Kev use them to show our photography online and sell our stuff. Albums, prints, frame prints to our clients after we've photographed a gig. You for weddings as well, still, Kev.
I sell signed pictures of you being blobbied.
What? Oh, God, I'd forgotten about that. I found, funnily enough, I'd lost something in the shed. I was looking for, when you lose something that's just such a small little spigot or something that just screws onto something. What have I done with that? And I almost turned the shed upside down, and I found that row of pictures. I found me being pushed off stage by Blobby. Do you know, these days, Kev, that would have been some kind of health and safety thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Blobby would be cancelled.
If you were thinking, who's Blobby, it was this. How do you describe Blobby, Kev? Apart from saying it looks a bit like us now.
Yeah, like an 80s novelty character, wasn't he? Very, very big, very famous. Big pink and yellow spots, wasn't he?
That's right, yeah. And he would just destroy stuff. He would go, the whole point was he would go into a TV studio or whatever, and he'd just bump into stuff and just knock stuff over, wouldn't he? For some reason, that was hilarious, Kev.
It was hilarious, yeah. But on a more serious note, back to Pick Time,
yes.
They have just released, actually reasonably recently, big update, which is great, especially for those who have relationships with vendors. So they've got the AI vendor stuff now. So you can basically give access to particular vendors and, just say, right, they're a florist, and it just gives them access to the flowers. or they're a cake maker, and it just gives them access to the cakes and stuff like that. It's brilliant.
How does it do that then? It identifies cake shape.
Artificial intelligence, isn't it? I can't even say that, so I don't know. It's far too clever.
Is that
for
a bit
me.
like your drinks reception?
We'll have to ask Jack or Rosa.
Yeah, they'll know. They'll
know the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's being, you know, in the Pick Time Facebook group. There's a lot of people who love that idea. I've never been one of those people that kind of, you know, dance around vendors much, I've got to say. But if I were, then that would be a very, very useful feature. I know a lot of people do that.
I have recently started. I don't think you ever did this, Kev. I got some advice from a video guy that I was working with, who incidentally tore apart my my website and said all the things that you do about it. It was anyway, blah blah blah. And he said, "Do you know what you need to do? You need to collect all the Instagram handles and blah 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 of all those you work with, and make sure you put them at the end of every single Instagram post you do." I don't know. Sometimes it feels a little bit like hashtag stuffing, or am I being a bit squeamish?
No, he's kind of right. I mean, I prefer to do it organically through the text. So, you know, I might say, you know, my last Instagram post, for example, was, you know, this was a wonderful wedding at whatever the venue was. Boom, 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 boom. I generally don't go into the, you know, flowers by what's the name, cake by what's the name, blah blah blah. But yeah, I mean, there's no real harm in doing that. Yeah. You know, it's about scratching backs, isn't it?
I suppose so.
My back is fully scratched now, so I don't have any itches.
Well, that's good to know. And Pick Time have been nicely scratching our back for a little while. Or are we scratching theirs? I don't know. It's a mutual scratch. But
symbiotic scratching.
Symbiotic scratching. Very good, Kev. Have you passed your O levels? My God, look at my age. GCSEs as well today. So anyway, go to Pick Time. pick-time.com. You can show your pictures, sell pictures. Use that AI tool that Kev's talking about. It's the one that we both use. We recommend it. We've been using it for years. Go to pick-time.com. If you enter FujiCast, upper or lowercase, really doesn't matter. At checkout, you get 1 month ka-ching free. Right. On O levels, Kev. We mentioned this morning, just very briefly. Is it my imagination, or did they used to be printed on a board and you went in and everybody's results were there? So somebody would say, "James, you didn't get your maths." It was really cruel.
Yeah, I remember from my GCSEs, picking my GCSEs up. They were on a board, but they were in envelopes. So they were just pinned up with one of those silver paper clips with your name on it. That's what I remember. I don't remember seeing all of the grades, you know. So yeah, but you know, you were a few years behind me, weren't you, or ahead of me? So maybe in those days it was different.
Thank you.
Did you do O levels or GCSEs?
Oh come on, you know I didn't do GCSEs. I did O levels.
Yeah, but it must have been close.
No, I mean
my sister did O levels, and she was the last year to do O levels.
Okay.
She's 5 years older than me.
Oh well, it would have been on the cusp then, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But
you can rest in the knowledge that O levels were harder. So there you go.
Don't tell that to your Rosa or our Jack.
No, she won't give a damn today. She's like, he's on cloud 100.
I'm sure, and so she should be. And then you got CSEs as well, didn't you? Anyway, let's not go down that route. Right. Questions. You going first or me, Kev?
I'll go first. 20 hours ago, Ivan Creeth said, I have a quick question for the boys. Is -2 highlights on the X100F the same as +2 highlights on the X100V? Now, I wonder if he meant +2 highlights is the same on both of them, or -2 is the same on both of them, because -2 on one would not be the same as +2 on another. So let's assume that he's just typed in a plus rather than a minus, or a minus rather than a plus. And he's asking the question, essentially, are the highlight settings the same on the X100F as they are on the X100V? And the answer is yes and no, I would say. So they both do the same. It will do the same thing, but each sensor reacts slightly differently. So it would not be the case, I don't think, if you took exactly the same picture on the X100F with -2 highlights as on the X100V with -2 highlights, you would see identical tone curve settings in the camera. I don't think. I've never done it, but I don't think so. Each camera, or each sensor, I should say, the The algorithm, I would imagine, slightly varies, difference in each sensor, in the processors and the size of the sensor and all that kind of stuff. So I would say no, not identical, but pretty close.
I'm not. This next one from Stuart Palmer has been sitting in the inbox for quite a while. We might have answered a question. I think we must have done, but maybe we weren't clear about something. Hello again, he says. Thank you for considering my question on the last episode. I should have been a bit more clear, but I was asking about the advantages of the Fuji system for somebody who does more landscapes and wildlife than portraits. Because we all know Fujifilm is great for portraits, he says, in brackets. I currently use a Canon camera, but have owned many different brands over the last 40 years, and would change again if something better came along. I did have a chance to use an XT4 with the 100-400 in Yellowstone several years ago. I had two issues. Once an elk came out of nowhere, but I missed the shot, as it does, because the AFMF switch got bumped while taking it out of the bag. Had I been more familiar with the system, I might have figured it out in time. However, the photos that did turn up were very nice indeed. Although camera weight is a plus as well, the 100-400 is still very heavy, and I found it hard to hold for very long on the XT4. Do you find that, Kev? I suppose the 100-400, it's a bit of a weighty old thing, though, as is the 50-140 as well, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, I do use that lens when I'm doing the sports photography, and I've done recently the judo stuff for like 8-9 hours with it, and it's noticeable, definitely, compared to using like the 18mm or 56mm. But I also remember from my distant past using my Canon 1D Mark IV with a whatever they had. They had a 100-400 zoom as well, I think, which was big, or it might have been 72. I don't know. But anyway, I remember just doing rugby matches for that and thinking, oh my god, I used to always have that on a monopod. But the judo, I didn't have to worry about monopod. But yeah, it is noticeable. There is a difference, I would say.
Do you use the 50-140 much as well? Or was that the one you were referring to, or did you mean the?
I use both. Yeah. So the 50-140 mostly I would be using when I do the road running. The road runner. Was that the Anthill Mob?
No, that was the Roadrunner. Meep.
Yeah, but weren't the Anthill Mob in that as well?
No, that's a totally different cartoon, Kev. The Anthill Mob were. Help. What?
That was it, wasn't it? What was her name? And then the Anthill Mob would turn up in their car.
Have you been sniffing the champagne already this morning? Is it?
I'm sure that was the case. Anyway, what was the question anyway?
Well, that was
yes. Basically, yeah, they're a bit heavier.
He did say as well. By the way, I really enjoyed the comments about shipping Kevin to the wedding so he'd be on time. And I think I've got a marketing plan for you. A bit too late for Kev now, really. Wouldn't it be great, though, if somebody purchased a wedding package? Maybe this is what you could do instead of shooting a wedding, Kev. Wouldn't it be great if somebody purchased a wedding package, they actually received a package on the wedding day, and Kev would pop out of the box and start shooting?
Wouldn't have to be a very big box, in fairness.
What do you mean? Have you lost a lot of weight now, Kev?
No, sorry, I just meant height.
Oh, right.
Yeah. No, You're quite right. It would have to be a massive box.
No, I didn't mean it like that, Kev. I was thinking you look very trim. How's your personal training coming along?
I haven't done. I've stopped that for a bit. I've been going to the gym, but I've hurt my arm.
What?
Don't get into it. It's not worth it. I'm not talking about it. Let's talk about Canon cameras instead.
Why Canon cameras?
Any cameras, anything other than my ailments.
What would you rather talk about, a Sony camera or your ailments?
I'd rather talk about a Sony camera.
Oh, blimey, it must be bad. Oh, Kev.
Yeah.
Right, question from Facebook then.
Right, let's go back a bit. So David Jennings says, recently watched a YouTube video where the photographer said he would shoot the entire day with a set of white balance of 5,500K. Didn't we answer this? To make it easier to batch edit parts of the day. I have always done auto white balance correcting in Lightroom. Keen to know your thoughts on this. Now, Sean Tucker, maybe that's the video he's talking about, because I think Sean does that. I'm fairly sure we talked about this, and I don't know whether it was that particular question or a different time.
I think we've had similar questions on it. Sean's recent-ish film, funnily enough, I don't know whether you saw the start of that, Kev, but he said he was discussing white balance with me in a pub, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to come across as truly not very with it. because I work with white balance, auto white balance, and he was suggesting that's certainly not the way that he works. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, so presumably that's the video, and Sean did do a really good video on this. So if that is the one, we'll dig it out and we'll put it in the show notes. No, I don't do it. I did try it. It did not work at all for me, because ultimately it's fine if you have the white balance set to the same thing all the time. If you're shooting roughly similar stuff. Now, Sean shoots mostly street photography, or he might be in the studio or something. Whereas for a wedding, where the lighting is changing dramatically and drastically very quickly, just coming out of a church, in the cloud goes over, or you're in the reception, where, it changes all the time. It is not, I will actually, I will put my hat on the table and say it is not the best way to do it for weddings.
Auto white balance with a BIOS on white, for me, that's the way that I use it with my cameras anyway.
Auto white balance is brilliant, and it's certainly in the modern Fujifilm cameras, and in fact all modern mirrorless cameras as well. Auto white balance is very, very good these days. So I don't see the point in the extra work. I rarely, well, I won't say rarely. I probably do have to do white balance tweaks, but I'm rarely these days think, oh my God, that's like way out. If I'm doing dancing shots, for example, and they've got, I don't know, yellow DJ lights or whatever, and the image is yellow, and they look yellow in the picture, then that's what they look like, because that's what it was like at the time. I don't see the point in white balancing that out to try and make their skin tones look neutral, and then the yellow lights will look blue, because that's not what it was like in real life. And in which case, you might as well have used flash to clean up that light. And then you'd get yellow lights in the background and clean skin tones. But it's not. I personally don't think it's the right way to do things in the context of weddings or very fluctuating light scenarios.
Now, this is a very, very long question. Are you ready? Sit down, grab yourself a cup of tea. It's from Pekka. P-E-K-K-A. Dear sirs, yada yada yada, sorry this is going to be a long one. I've been meaning to email you for quite some time now, in the same way I've been meaning to do yoga and wash the car, but now in your latest episode you answered a question from Sandra about having all the gear and not being happy with the photos. I don't know if this applies to Sandra, but I recently noticed that every time I think I'm going to read about photography, I end up reading about camera gear. I've made myself a nice cup of coffee and dive into some photo magazines, only to find myself immersed in various reviews and comparisons and opinions on new cameras. Pretty soon I'm wondering whether I should upgrade my X-T3 to an X-T5 for improved animal autofocus, or maybe get into a full frame sensor for the same reason. There's precious little about photography in the photography media, print or online. And don't even get me started on tickety-tock. Because our brains can only produce output as thoughts and ideas built on the stuff that we put into them, can we be tricked into thinking that it's all about the gear? I notice the same thing in other things that I do, like cycling. Cycling media is mostly about gear reviews. You're right there, because I've seen a few of those. Is it all about the gear? Kev?
Well, so yes, I mean, that's what sells. When you're doing a YouTube video, for example, when I do a YouTube video and I do a review of a camera, I might get 50, 60, 70, even 100,000 views. If I spend 3 weeks making a video about, light, composition, moment, and, more of an artistic thing on it, I might be lucky to get 1,000 views.
Yeah.
So yeah, people and the algorithms push it forward. You see, that's the thing, because ultimately, and it'll be the same on TikTok. Ultimately, the Google in YouTube's case is makes money from the ad revenue, and so the videos that get high click payments for tech reviews are the ones where the companies will pay more to stick an advert on one of those YouTube videos. So they naturally, well, not necessarily naturally, but algorithmically will float to the top. And people do tend to be more into those. I don't know why. I hate the fact that that's the case. But yeah, I believe they are right in their assumptions and their observations. And I will stand with Pekka and hold their hands and say, Yes, let's change the world.
You're about to sing Kumbaya or something.
We can do that as well.
Does it annoy you? I mean, you may have answered this question. It does annoy you when you make a video that it has to that you have to put in some. So I better do something about gear, otherwise it's just not going to shift anything.
Well, yeah, I mean, I try not to do that. I have to say, but the stats tell me, tell me what's going on, and for me, for example, with all being totally transparent about things, I like YouTube drives a lot of preset sales for me. And so, I typically know that, if I do a YouTube video about a camera or about a lens or, which lens is better than the others, then that will get higher views and hence will sell more presets for me. I don't like that fact, but that's the way it operates. And it's part of my business plan. But yeah, it's a bit sad, really. But there you go. Anyway, buy some presets.
Kev, how do you do your titling for your videos? Do you? I know I read something recently about ChatGPT being a pretty good place now, and this goes for blogging as well. So it might be a good blog tip, depending upon the prompt that you give it. That it's getting very, very good at delivering titles that are more likely to be noticed by, I suppose, Google and so on, when it comes to titling blogs and YouTube videos and so on.
Yeah, so ChatGPT is excellent, I think. I have totally avoid the clickbaity type titles. I don't like any of that stuff, although they can work. They do work sometimes. However, the thing to be careful of with ChatGPT for any content really is that it's the Google and the algorithm in Instagram, in fact, and the algorithm in YouTube, etc., can establish now whether you've used AI, and that part of the algorithm is whether it's 100% AI content, 90%, 80%, whatever. Now, I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows, whether that will affect its ranking based on that, but it can identify if it's just been driven by AI, if the title's been driven by AI, the description's been driven by AI, etc. Now, in my head, if I think back to the way that Google has operated all over the years and the way that Instagram does, for example, if you use automation, Hootsuite and all that kind of stuff, there's a little bit of it that goes, well, if you can't be asked to do this yourself, then maybe I won't rank it quite as high. So I do use ChatGPT to help me for sure. But then I'll always make sure I kind of give it my voice and take the ideas from that and write it up properly, rather than just go down I'll put lazy in inverted commas route and just kind of copy and paste from ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT is amazing, but there's prickly thorns with it.
Yeah. Does that mean also those that use ChatGPT as a writing assistance tool? Does that mean that it would also be able to tell that that's being generated from ChatGPT and perhaps rank that lower as well?
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. I mean, I don't know whether that is the case, but I am fairly sure that would be the case. So yeah, just be a little bit careful.
Now, Pekka had another bit to the email. The also software. Every now and then you mention Adobe's licensing. It's an old chestnut. I know, Kev, but while I appreciate why a professional photographer would use their products, I think it's worthwhile exploring some other options. You see, when I started my photo hobby, I got a Lightroom license. It was what the pros were using after all, so it must be best. A couple of years after, they switched to the subscription model, and like most others, I continued to pay, but then I started to see the model almost as a form of blackmail. Give us your money, and your photo collection won't get hurt. And pray we don't alter the deal. I know it's not for everybody. While software is, he started using other software. Just a rapid photo downloader is one that he suggests. Now we talked about this a lot, haven't we, Kev? About it being the fuel in your car, etc. And if you're a professional, then Adobe, it's still, I believe, one of the most powerful products out there, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a misconception that if you stop paying for Lightroom, you lose your pictures. If you stop paying for the cloud-based storage, if you're using Lightroom Creative Cloud and you're storing your images on their server, then yeah, of quite rightly, you'll lose access to them if you stop paying, just like you lose access to your stuff on Dropbox or your stuff on Google Drive if you stop paying for it. It's a misconception that if you stop paying for Lightroom, that your images, and you're using Lightroom Classic, for example, that your images are no longer accessible. That's just not true. Your images are always available to you. I always, and another always, encourage people in the catalog settings. There's a little tick box that says store edits or store updates with XMP, and it creates a little tiny sidecar file, which is an XMP file. So even if you decide not to use Lightroom in the future, you can take those images into most other software applications. Will read those XMP files and will bring in the adjustments as well, the similar adjustments to those software packages. So that's not true. It's not true that if you stop paying, you can no longer access your raw files on your computer or anything like that. So that's not true. And I would say, we've used this analogy before, stop putting fuel in your car and your car won't go anywhere. And it's the same thing, isn't it? I do fully understand why, if you're an amateur or part-time photographer or something, you might not want to pay for things. And that's fine. Lots of people went, oh, no, Lightroom charging subscription now. I'm going to move to Capture One. And I'm telling you now, if you go back in the archives 2-3 years ago, there is an episode of this podcast where I said, I guarantee that within a certain amount of periods of time, Capture One will go to subscription based. It's the way of the world. You pay monthly for your Dropbox subscription. You pay monthly for Office. You pay monthly for pretty much everything, don't you, these days? Or subscription annually, whatever. That's just the way it is. I personally don't mind it because, as you said, it's just part of the business. But I think I'd rather, back in the early days, when we had what do they call it, the Creative Suite, the Adobe Creative Suite, that was like $2,500 you'd buy. And then 18 months later, if you wanted anything updated, you'd have to buy it again. Upgrade, £600 for an upgrade or something. So I'd much rather pay whatever it is, £11 a month and have all of the updates and not worry about it. But you won't lose access to your pictures, I promise you.
That's one of the things I found when I was cleaning out the shed the other day, trying to look for that thing that I was looking for, was I found one of the last boxes I bought of one of the big Adobe software boxes. I might frame it, Kev. Why did you go from, now you've Capture One is subscription now, okay, and Adobe is subscription. You used Capture One, didn't you, for a while? Why did you come home, if you will, to Adobe?
I never used it. I still have it. I still have it on my computer, and I still occasionally open it up and everything. And it's fine. There's no, there's no kind of. I don't think there's any kind of Capture One is better than Lightroom. Lightroom is better than Capture One argument. I just think it's personal preference. And for me, Capture One does not have the workflow that I need to use with it. So, I can't use the smart collections. It doesn't allow me to use lookup tables. It just doesn't have the stuff that I want. But if you don't need those things and Capture One is your tool of choice, then yeah, absolutely, fill your boots. But there's no real right or wrong to it, I don't think. But, Capture One is subscription now. I think you can get a legacy license for something or other. But, that's the way it is.
Before you do a question, Vic Jam, just a very, very quick thing here. We were talking about truck driving. It was, when was it? It was only last month or perhaps a month before. I just saw a very romanticised vision of truck driving. He's recommended 99% Invisible, who do a brilliant podcast, an episode called Over the Road. Maybe that's just to destroy my romanticised vision of truck driving. I don't know. It's not as romantic as I thought it was, Kev, particularly since I learned that you're not allowed to stop very often. And that was it. And there's a reason that some people carry empty plastic milk bottles. Say no more.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we move on from that? Right, your question.
Yeah. Right, we're going back. I've just, on that Facebook group post thing, I've just clicked on top comments. So I've decided to let Facebook tell me which ones are the most important ones to answer. This is from 30 weeks ago. We never answered it. It's from Christopher Hall, but it's relevant actually to what we've kind of just talked about. I've started to listen to your podcast and I'm really enjoying it. This is 30 weeks ago, remember. It does, however, get me the amount of technical questions there are. I have recently gone away from wanting technically perfect images to ones that are more authentic and real. Do you think that people should stop worrying about the technical aspects of how a camera works, or the pixels in a photo and concentrate on capturing life. And he gives his website if you are so interested, which you're all very welcome to do so if you want a shout out on the show. And it is ChristopherJamesHall.Foundation. We will link to it in the show notes. So that kind of ties in with that question we just had from Pekka, I think. And yeah, we do get a lot of technical questions. We get a lot of repeated questions, but I think they're relevant in many cases. And it's the idea of, he says, I've recently gone away from wanting technically perfect images to ones that are more authentic and real. And again, we've said this 1,000 times that, for us, you and I think, emotive images are far more powerful than technically perfect ones. I'd rather a grainy, out of focus picture that has got a killer moment than a perfectly pixeled, sharp picture, F8 and B there, F8 and B square. That is doesn't have any real story to it.
Yeah, one of my favorite pictures is actually one that I show on the wedding website of the. It looks like grandma, but it's not. It's mum, and it's a moment between mum and daughter immediately after the wedding ceremony. And because I was struggling to get a shot over the shoulder of the mum-in-law, I went into a proper Dutch tilt and broke all those rules that I have for myself when I'm making pictures. But it's the emotion and if you zoomed right in, you'd see a tiny little tear on mum's face as well. And that for me with the humongous Dutch tilt, etc. It means so much more than a perfect picture.
Yeah, well, those of you who are kind enough to support us on Patreon will have had the Patreon pop-up last Monday, and it was World Photography Day, wasn't it? And we both picked a picture that were driven by emotion. I don't think we even talked about what it was taken on or the sharpness or anything like that. So yeah, absolutely. 100%.
This is something I talk about on the new podcast that's launching in a it'll be a few weeks' time actually, Kev, when this one goes out. The wedding one, the 1,000 weddings one. I'll get a shameless plug in if you don't mind. But I do talk with Adrienne Catanese, who is a good friend of yours actually, Kev. You mentored Adrienne.
I was chatting to her last night, in fact.
Yeah, she's
about you.
Oh, really? Oh dear. I hope it was all positive then. I really enjoy talking with Adrienne. She is the dream interviewee or chattee, because you never feel like you're interviewing Adrienne. She just chats, doesn't she? And she's fantastic. So much knowledge as well about photography. Yeah. And she mentioned that, and she was doing it with a bit of caution because we both follow, and you do as well, a particular photographer who I suppose exercises this style where the pictures are a bit more blurry. There's lots of motion blur in there, and then they're no way near perfect in terms of perfection when it comes to all the rules of photography. But they're done genuinely, and I don't go, as Adrienne doesn't either, for this idea that you just waggle your camera around to produce that effect. That those moments come from genuine moments where you're moving with a camera to try and catch something fast. Another example would be a friend of mine, Jason Florio, who made pictures on the terrible day that the Twin Towers fell. One of the photographs, Kev, from the day that is the most potent one for me is when he was running away from the second tower that fell. As a photojournalist, he was way too close. And as he ran up the street, he held his camera behind him and he was just firing, as much as he could to sort of get this moment as he was running away from this building coming down and the clouds coming at him. That, for me, Kev, is about as imperfect as a picture you can make. But, boy, is it potent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you got to be a good photographer to be able to do that kind of stuff. And, yeah, you do see quite a bit of that nowadays where I just think it's a bad picture, and then they just go, actually, it's now trendy to do that. Not a lot, of course, but if you've got the ability to do that and make it meaningful, then Bob's your uncle.
Is he still my uncle? I'm not sure this is a question. Johan Otterdal Edfeldt. I love that name. It's worth looking at his stayuntilforever.com website. He's been working on an Okaloi project. He calls it the Okaloi Collective. Do you know what Okaloi is?
No.
One camera, one lens, 1 year. He says the oak. I knew you knew it, but it doesn't instantly come to you when you say Ocaloid, does it? He said, I believe this approach could influence thousands of photographers, pros as beginners. I've been doing it myself for 2 years. So essentially, he picks up a camera. He takes one camera, one lens for 1 year. I'm sure he shoots with his other cameras as well, but he sort of dedicates a project to one camera. I've been doing it for 2 years and have inspired many to pick up the camera again, to print more and get that fire glowing in their eyes. All you need is one camera, one lens, 1 year, and it changes your photography forever. Get away from the same images that you always take, free yourself from gear, and go into a world of new and exciting possibilities. Learn everything from the beginning and find again your true love for photography. Break the rules, embrace the grain, and create your images instead of just taking them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good thing. That's certainly not a new thing, though. I didn't know it was called Ocaloid. I didn't know it had a terminology. If you look at many photographers from the past, they only had one camera, one lens. Even professional photographers. Even Matt Hart did that. I remember Matt Hart about 7 or 8 years ago. Just shot everything for 1 year on X100S, I think it was at the time, and only in black and white. It's not a new thing, but yeah, absolutely, sounds quite cathartic. From a non-commercial point of view, why not? Sounds like a good thing to do.
If you pick one camera from your arsenal of cameras, Kev, and you put one lens on it and you used it for 1 year, what would it be? What of those would you choose?
I'd go with the X100 VI, so it'd just be that 23mm lens.
And what about an interchangeable lens setup?
Well, if I was using the X Pro or the XT or something like that, then I would use the 18mm f1.4.
And what X Pro? I would put it on my my X Pro 1. I've got a vintage 28mm lens on there at the moment, and I love it, Kev.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. I think it's a great thing to do if you're under no pressure and you're photographing for yourself. Absolutely. Yeah. You couldn't really do it in a commercial sense, but yes, absolutely. That's maybe now I don't have those pressures. I might do that.
Right. I think we have time for one more, Kev. Make it a doozer of a question. And actually, we've done well. We've stayed away from tech for the last two. Go us.
Yes. I'm desperately looking for one that's interesting. Happy New Year from Australia. No, that's probably the wrong one.
How old is that question, Kev?
I tried to find one that's not technical. Right. Let's go for Isabella Goroff.
Okay.
She says, I forgot one question. Oh, there must have been a question before as well. This is not going very well, is it? Is there any way to trick Lightroom into thinking my X100V photos are from my XT5 so I can use Nostalgic Neg as a profile? I love that. Well, I think in the latest firmware updates, Nostalgic Neg has... Oh, no, not X100V. No, yes. Well, in which case, I don't know. If the Nostalgic Neg has come to an X100V in recent updates, I think there was some kind of rumor about that. But you can technically do it by using a tool called EXIF Tool, and you just essentially change the model of the camera from on the raw file from X100V to XT5. It needs to be exactly the same as it would to say on an XT5 raw file in the EXIF data. You can change that, and then Lightroom will think it's an XT5 picture and will give you all of the inbuilt Lightroom profiles for things like Nostalgic Neg and all of the other stuff.
It wasn't a long question, so we've got time to put one more thing in, and it's from another friend of ours, Kev, across the pond there, Amy Milstein. Does Amy live in New York as well? Is she a New Yorker?
She does. Yeah.
New Yorker.
Yeah.
I decided to be official and write to you via the FujiCast email in order to recommend a book. So it's not a question, it's a recommendation. A fantastic wedding photography book called Dreams and Schemes, Love and Marriage in Modern Times by Abigail Heyman. I recently had somebody tell me that my photos made them think of her, which I take as a massive compliment. My dream is to travel small towns across the country where wedding receptions still take place in the basement or the hall of the church where the wedding occurs, and photograph them. That and small town city halls or wedding chapel weddings are my dream project. We should do it as a group. There we go, Kev.
We should do it as a group. Now, I didn't see that email, so I don't know. I have not looked at that book, so I will look at it up.
Yeah.
Look at it up.
Look at it up.
Look at it up.
Well, you're off to your Rosa's celebration lunch now. What was the Diggity Doggity Dig, or what was the pub called again?
Cat and custard.
Cat and custard. Do you think they serve cats and custard as well as a special on the menu?
In a pot.
Well, they're doing that funny old pizza thing with chocolate sprayed all across it, so who knows? Anyway, get your questions in. We've gone a bit light, actually, on the email questions. Send them to click@fujicast.co.uk. click@fujicast.co.uk. Now, I know for those who live in the UK, this is usually the quiet time for podcasts, so we could do with a bit of, well, we got September on the way, so it starts to busy up again, but we could do with a bit of a helping hand there. And Kev, if you want to send something in via Facebook, tell us how we do it.
Go to Facebook, go search for the FujiCast Facebook group, and you can join. There is a very, very active group. And at the top, there is a pinned post that says questions for the show. And there is where your question will be posted and may be answered.
Maybe answered. Right, that's it for this time then. See you in a couple of weeks' time. Of course, we have a Patreon pop-up in the meantime. Enjoy the cats and the custard, Kev. Bye-bye!
Bye-bye!
The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.